Hello, your friendly neighborhood host, JT Wheatley, back again for another episode of the History Comics Podcast. This time, another edition of the classics. This time, of course, one of the all-time great comic books, The Watchmen, by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. I've talked about The Watchmen and its history before, but this time I'd like to give a little in-depth review. Just talk about how brilliant this 12-issue maxi series, released from 1996-1987, that depicts a modern take on superheroes and what it would be like if they lived today. And it starts brilliantly with a simple murder mystery where a guy in a penthouse gets murdered, and the police investigate it, and they find some things don't quite add up. And then all of a sudden, this vigilante Rorschach shows up, investigates the scene, and he discovers that there was a comedian, a famous, though sometimes notorious superhero of his time who was murdered. And that's what kicks off the whole story, as Rorschach starts tracking down other superheroes and former superheroes to figure out who killed the comedian. And what was the motivation behind it? And that's the brilliance of this plot. It's like it follows what Aristotle brilliantly pointed out in Poetics probably thousands of years ago. The way to write a good story, you start small and build. I mean, The Watchmen starts out as a simple murder mystery, and it builds to this epic story that deconstructs superhero genre brilliantly and still remains easily one of the best superhero stories ever told. It holds up brilliantly to this day. I mean, brilliant characters throughout. It's noted that Alan Moore and, of course, the brilliant artist Dave Gibbons adapted the classic Charlton characters from The Question, Captain Atom, and Blue Beetle, and turned them into Rorschach, Dr. Manhattan, and the Owl, and Night Owl, and it's a great story from beginning to the end. He references so many different things in history, brings brilliant parallels with the Cold War at the time, which still holds up. Everything about this story holds up. It's incredibly dense read too. I mean, for a comic book, even though it's usually fun 9 panels per page, beautifully illustrated detail with Dave Gibbons, including most distinctly issue number 6, which deals with Rorschach's origin, called Beautiful Symmetry, where that book literally begins and ends in almost the same way. So it's a piece of artistic brilliance and so forth. And everything about this story is brilliant, and it's worth picking up. And it still is a book that's so good it's in print to this day, to the chagrin of Alan Moore, who, by their contract, if it ever went out of print, they would finally get the rights. But sorry, Mr. Moore, you wrote one of the best comic book stories of all time. Who's going to put this over out of print? And as a result, they don't get full ownership. They still get royalties, though. So it's like, hey, your book's going to be in print for the rest of your life, and you get a royalty check. So, suck it up and deal with it, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, most writers, artists say that's the best deal ever made. Overall, just a brilliant story. This is this is in my top 5 comic book stories of all time. It's a must-read. If you haven't read it, you have to read it at least once. And once you read it, you'll be mind-blown how good it is. And it's still referenced to this day. I mean, most significantly, there's a classic bit about this character, Dollar Bill, who gets his cape stuck in a turnstile at a bank and gets killed because of it. And, of course, that leads to the classic no cape speech by Edna Mole in The Incredibles. So definitely worth checking out. And interestingly, this book's aged so well is that when people try to change or adapt it, such as in the what I call the successful failure of the Watchmen movie by Zack Snyder in 2009, when he tries to change the ending, it just reaffirmed, nope, the original ending is still perfect. People try to complain, no, it doesn't fit, it's kind of weird. No, it's perfect. Everything about this book is perfect. It's just a brilliant comic story from beginning to end. Must read, a true classic, and yes, like I said, The Watchmen, like I said, the history of, go back and listen to it if you will, but definitely go out and read The Watchmen. It's a true classic. And now is August 8th, 2019, time for the favorite comic of the week. Usagi Yojimbo, number 2 by Stan Sakai, which continued its new story in which Usagi Yojimbo is trying to just enjoy a nice puppet play, only to have it interrupted when a bunch of strange zombie kids and dead bodies start showing up. Really fun story that is a great return in this classic series. It's been consistently over the years one of the best comic book series on the stands, and course, quick education. Usagi Yojimbo is not a Teenage Mutant Ninja character. He was invented before that, but Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird loved the character so much they said, hey, let's bring him over here. And if you pay attention to the cartoon, Usagi Yojimbo is brought in from an alternate dimension. So that's how the whole thing works. So it's kind of neat. He's the original character, and Stan Sakai got a nice little royalty check when those action figures sold, which is always pretty cool, too. But back in his original dimension, this is just a great story. It mixes in anamorphic characters in a Japanese feudal Japan, feudal times at least. And this like a fun story with a neat mystery about it, mixing in like the classic puppet play culture at the time, along with some Japanese ghost stories and so forth. And the art, while cartoony, I mean, like I said, Stan Sakai is drawing anamorphic rabbits and stuff like that and having them play off as humans. It's still a serious story, great read. And Usagi Yojimbo is easily one of the great. It's a great story from beginning to end to read, and this is another great issue to pick up on and start getting into this character. And with that, that'll be it for this week. Join me again next week when we'll probably have another classic episode. Not quite done with getting my 10 episodes in the bank for getting back to full history, but I'm almost there. But until then, go out and enjoy yourself a good comic book, and most importantly, go out and reread The Watchmen. That's a true classic.